Hello, my name is Hassan Sorrells, and this is the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast shorts. There's no co-host on these shorts episodes. These are now around 2 to 4 minute, sometimes as long as 6 to 10 minute observations, ideas, thoughts, or rants about the literature, philosophy, psychology, and even the theology of leadership. Because listening to me talk about leadership for now around 2 to 4 minutes is still better than reading and trying to understand yet another business book. Even that business book your coworker won't stop raving about because it quote unquote changed their life, but you can't see any difference in their leadership behavior. So how good could that author be? Normally, I don't comment on the political news of the moment because news means brand new, and political is always a source, invariably, of strife and emotion. But something significant has happened very recently, within the last week, that I need to address using this platform and using my voice, as small and as insignificant as that voice may be. This will take a little while, so be patient with me. In America, we did not wind up in the cultural and political and social here we are at now by accident. We never historically do. When Americans, as rowdy and cantankerous as a tribe as we tend to be, slowly get riled up about cultural or political or social questions we have no easy answer to, we tend invariably to default at the end to violence. We have seen such behavior in the run-up to every major war we've ever fought as a nation. We have seen this in every major internal conflict we've ever fought against each other as a people. It takes us a while, sometimes as long as at least 4 generations, but eventually Americans do take up arms and either begin shooting at each other or shooting at somebody else. But take heart, because there are a lot of steps along the path from being cantankerous and rowdy to picking up a weapon and beginning to pick off our neighbors or other people in other countries one by one, and then all at once. And along each step, along that long path, we do have people, genuine, good-hearted Americans, sincere people who provide us warnings we ignore, who try to provide us alternative paths that some of us do try to take, but that seemingly fail to achieve the outcomes that we are looking for. And, of course, they seek to provide us hard wisdom that seems uncomfortable because it tastes like truth that, in the end, when everything's all over, is looked back upon soberly as the wisdom it was at the time, after all that shooting has concluded. Why am I saying this way? Why am I beginning obliquely like this? I think you know why. The recent assassination of the college political conservative commentator and debater Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA, is yet another step along a path we as a nation state, as a culture, as a political entity, and as a theological entity began walking down right after the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001. From that point of time, when those towers went down until this point in time right now, we have been engaged in a process of widening division in language, rhetoric, debate. And this has been happening in the body politic of America. Now, before you get all head up, there are a lot of fingers to point and a lot of blame to be cast around. And everybody needs to be willing to accept their fair share, even myself. But we have been here before. The problem with living in the internet and social media driven era is that we forget history. We are blind to the past. In the 1970s, we were here, right after the Summer of Love in the 1960s. In the 1920s, we were here, right after the horrors of World War I were visited upon the doughboys from Kansas. And we were here right before the American Civil War in the 1840s and in the 1850s. Trust me, historically, we have been here before as a people. And tragically, if we get through this moment, which I think we will wind up here again. It's in our nature. Because when political ideologies are divorced from civic common sense and strong transcendent religious beliefs, this is where human beings wind up. Look, I don't know anything about Charlie Kirk. Sure, I know he was influential and that Turning Point USA was extremely, as an organization, effective at getting the conservative male, sure white, but also black, Generation Z crowd to cast their votes in the most overwhelming numbers seen in any election so far for the last survivor of an assassination attempt in America, the current president, Donald Trump. Sure, I have seen a few of his debate videos on clips shared around on Instagram and, of course, in my Facebook feed, but I didn't know the man any more than any of you know me out there. His voice, his presence, his face, his positions were an avatar. They stood in as an avatar of a generation of conservatism that was becoming and continues to become more and more prominent by merely doing what conservatives have done better than liberal progressives have ever done, at least since the 1950s in this country. He went to where leftist thought and worldview believed it was dominant and argued against it, using logic and reason, without rancor, without malice, and seemingly without ill will. You can call that argument against progressive liberal ideologies hate. You can call it racism, you can call it misogyny, or you can call it bigotry. But at the end of the day, it is based in logic and reason. By the way, he came out of a long historical trend of conservatives doing that, or doing this behavior. William F. Buckley did it on Firing Line for years on PBS. Rush Limbaugh did it via his radio show for years. And Charlie Kirk had been doing it for about 13 years before his death last week at the age of 31. He was a normal presenting guy with normal conservative political views, arguing against a leftist-oriented college-aged people who always seemed to lose their minds in front of the microphone when he directly challenged their shibboleths and their worldviews. He was as direct a benefiter of free speech, and I appreciate this as a podcaster who needs to talk. He was as direct a benefiter of the free speech the left in the American discourse holds so dear, and yet he was not licentious or libertine about his words or his language. Every single thing I've seen from the man, and I haven't seen his tweets, so I don't know what that looks like, but every single thing I've seen from the man, it seemed as though he picked his words extremely carefully and exactly. And I gotta say, in a world where words are like water, they are literally everywhere, I can appreciate that. And I think that precision, that sense of being exact probably came from his deeply held religious beliefs, which fortunately, at least as far as I can see, seem to be held deeper than his political ones. In America, we did not wind up here with the assassination of this man by accident. We never do. Now, in the moment, and this is a moment that will pass just as another step on the road to something else unmentionable somewhere in the clearing at the end of the path if we don't get a hold of it, We are in the moment when the people of America, left, right, and center, must look at the death of this man and use it as a moment to get a hold of whatever is in your hearts and your souls, all the way down in the bottom in places you don't talk about on social media. This is not a gun issue. This is not a Second Amendment issue. Just like this isn't a First Amendment issue. This is not a freedom or censorship issue. This is not a political problem to be solved by passing some more unenforceable laws with predictable consequences for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. This is a problem, and the Charlie Kirk assassination is the outcome of a problem that exists in the souls of each and every person in America. We have lost, or we have abandoned in our technological sophistication, so many anchors that used to hold us to reality and anchor us to each other. We struggle to have traditions. We have redefined what a family actually is, and we have abandoned the communities around us in favor of paying attention to the algorithmically generated cultural barbarity that exists in the troughs of our phones. No one is immune from this, by the way. Not me, not you, not Charlie Kirk, who manipulated that and used it to his own ends. No one. I don't know how we get back our souls outside of an appeal on our knees to the God of the universe who made us and who is, I am sure, sickened by our sins. This is not about empty appeals to or violent dismissal of, quote-unquote, thoughts and prayers. Such statements, such appeals to thoughts and prayers, or even dismissal of them, are the last vestiges of the religious limbs we in America attempted to cut off long ago in an effort to become, quote-unquote, new men, and discovered that, to our cultural and moral dismay, we only advanced all the old sins. Greed, vanity, pride, deceit, anger, revenge, lust, desire for power, and the poverty, the spiritual poverty that all these sins create, we will have with us always. And I'm not the first person to point this out, by the way. I think Charlie Kirk realized this as well, and from his own perspective, based on his own relationship with transcendent existence. As of this writing, we have a suspect. As of this recording, we have a suspect who is alleged to have assassinated Mr. Kirk. And I don't know what's going to happen with all that. I'm sure that will be politicized, as everything else is in America. I'm sure the left will say the person was just another Republican young man, and I'm sure the right will say that the young man was just another radicalized leftist. But this really misses the point, right? I can guarantee that person, and this is where my position comes down, I can guarantee that the person who did the deed was driven by ancient demons that have nothing to do with politics. Those ancient demons that we have released in our social media algorithms and that are out of hell and are walking around right now. So, on that happy note, I have no definitive ending for this episode of this shorts show today. And I don't really know what to make of all of this. I have no conclusions. I know that Charlie was using his voice, his intellect, and even his manipulation behind the scenes of algorithms and spreadsheets to attempt, in his own way, to pull or to yank or to drag the nation state of the United States of America back from the precipice of what he perceived as doom. And I know for sure that in my own way, I'm trying to do the same thing, just as I think that all people of sincerity are trying to do as well. And I know that not just for Charlie Kirk, not just for me, but also for all of you out there, that if you're using these things that have been given us, these technological tools for good to preserve the Republic, well, I think that's, matter of fact, I know that that's a worthwhile project. But I'm not wise. I can't see all ends. But perhaps this one man's death will serve as another weight on the anchor that drags more men away from the pit of chaos and death that we seem culturally and politically and socially, for lack of a better term, hell-bent on diving headlong into. And well, today, that's it for me. Thank you for listening to the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast today. And now that you've made it this far, you should subscribe to the audio version of this show on all the major podcast players, including Apple iTunes, Spotify, YouTube Music, and everywhere else where podcasts are available. There's also a video version of our podcast on our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe to the video version of this podcast on the Leadership Toolbox channel on YouTube. Just search for Leadership Toolbox and hit the subscribe button there on YouTube. And while you're doing that, leave a 5-star review if you like what we're doing here on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Just go below the player and hit 5 stars. We need those reviews to grow, and it's the easiest way to help grow this show. And tell all your friends, of course, in leadership. By the way, if you don't like what we're doing here, well, you can always listen to another leadership show. There are several other good ones out there. At least that's what I've heard. All right. Well, that's it for me.